there's a lot of people that I know that will say that they're perfectionists. But at what point is your perfectionism becoming destructive?
The way that your brain is structured from a child, your value is tied up in how good you are. Your value is never tied up in just how you are.
It's like fail again, but just fail better.
Yeah.
And then fail better.
Yeah.
And then fail better again.
Anything you throw in front of the fire becomes fuel for the fire. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Network Podcast. This is episode 5.
Episode 5. Can you imagine? Can you believe? Already, here we are.
Who would have thought?
Who would have
Who would have thought? So if you watched the last episode, we got pretty deep.
We got very deep. So I think it's time to, lighten up the spirits in this one. Talk about something that's still deep in theory, but put a positive spin on it. And it's something that we all suffer with in life, not only our industry. So the topic of today's podcast is going to be around perfectionism.
Ooh.
So is your perfectionism holding you back? And where does that come from? What's your thoughts on perfectionism, Leigh?
Mate, like we were talking about yesterday, it's a question that I really want to be asking people. What are you most controversial about? And it's perfectionism. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life. I've been a perfectionist my whole life. I think it comes out of two places. People pleasing. That just comes from early childhood. That might have been a sort of reward system in my brain. And just the other thing of just being brought up that way, really focusing on the details. I think it's a genetic thing as well. My dad's like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just an absolute perfectionist. I'm aware of it, and I try not to let that get in my way. But that's what I'm controversial, because I do slip back into it every now and then.
But when you say you're a perfectionist, how far does that go? Because I feel like a lot of people can get so caught up in labeling themselves as a perfectionist that they let it really stop them from doing anything at all. And that's like what they blame. It's like a trigger thing. It's like, I'm a perfectionist, that's why I can't do it. So how deep does it go? Do you really think that, of course you try to strive to do it as best as you can, but does it stop you from getting to where you want it to get you?
No, and that's where the awareness comes in. So over my life, I've been aware of it, and I've understood that can get in your way. But that takes work and time and development. You need to be reading a few books about this stuff and learning about yourself. And I recognize it in myself, and I'm like, well, my perfectionism could hold me back, and there has to be a line drawn somewhere. And I was really lucky. It's interesting when different things people say to you hit at different times. When I was doing my apprenticeship, one of the guys that was teaching me, Rob, he said to me, Leigh, one of the most valuable tricks you're going to learn in hairdressing is knowing when to stop. Mm-hmm. and I thought, well, how do you know when to stop a haircut? When's it done? You don't know. There's no stop button where you're it's done now. There's no timer on it in the oven. It's it's cooked now. So, and it took me so many years to be to master, or not master, but learn a point or a level where I was happy to stop. Allow my perfectionism to go nuts in that moment, but once it's time to stop, it's time to stop. And
then not losing sleep at night because of that too.
Exactly. And so I know you're going to touch on this, and you're so good at saying it, but it's about getting out of your own way, basically.
Yeah.
And don't let your perfectionism get in your way. And one of the things that it's done for me is it's actually made my productivity skyrocket, because I'm not afraid to move on to the next thing. And I don't get caught up in the last one. There comes a level of trust in what you do. I'm at a point now in my career where I'm very happy with my skill level. I've learned how to learn, which I think more people need to learn to do, is learn to learn. And I'm confident in what I can do. So there's an accumulation of things, but learning to push the stop button and learning not to lose sleep over it. And it's okay. You're going to get another chance tomorrow. That's been a big one for me. But now, when I was younger, it would make me, what's the word? Not disappointed, but I would go about my day without a high level of satisfaction. I'd be like, well, the haircut didn't go how it went, so how I wanted it to go, so yeah, don't feel that good. And I remember there was years like that where I felt like that in the salon.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely felt that too.
Yeah,
there's often times where I've looked at things in the future. I've looked at, I guess, other stylists or other barbers, for example, looked at their work and thought, my work's not looking like theirs,
Yeah.
And then that's where the perfectionism thing can keep you up at night. But again, it's knowing to trust the process. I think to be able to let go of your perfectionism, you also have to be good at failing. And what I mean by that is you have to be good at accepting that you're not going to get it right from the beginning, and that it is a process, and you got to do it over and over again, and eventually, even the one day that you do a perfect haircut, like, does that even exist?
No, it doesn't.
There's no such thing. No. And who's to say that there is such a thing?
And I think those are the realization moments for me. I'm thinking in my head now, like, what's the accumulation stack of, like, what's changed my perspective on it. I think there's a few things. I'm going to get kind of honest with myself. I think even stuff like winning awards and things like that, I think that's had a bit to do with it as well.
But who's to even say that was perfect?
Oh no, they
that's
weren't. They weren't perfect.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect, but I think it played a part in giving me the confirmation and teaching me to learn to push the stop button. Because without that, I mean, and again, this is where I'm contradictory, and I know I am, but this swings to everything. It's like, I know deep down that I shouldn't be seeking external validation, but in a skill and a craft where there's a framework to work by, and that's how you're judged, and you just end up winning. To me, that's a good level of confirmation, and that's a little confidence booster, and you're like, okay, well, I pushed the stop button right there, and it worked. And that, I think that helped me as well.
Yeah.
And now, that's why I don't really get too worked up if someone doesn't like my haircuts. I'm like, well, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's fine. I'm going to do another one later on, so it's all right.
It's the affirmation, I think, once you get a little bit of social proof, recognition from your peers, recognition from, I guess, your clients. But I look back on my journey so far, and I'm like, I shared something on my Instagram the other day of some of the first haircuts that I've done, the first haircuts that I did on my family and stuff. And from a technical standpoint, them haircuts now, looking at them with the knowledge that I have of the industry and the technicality behind it, they were trash haircuts. But at the time, my family the guys were loving them. They were like, they thought they were the best haircuts in the world. So it's like, we create our own perfectionism. Essentially, to get deep on it. And we always have this area, at the academy, people are like, I just want my fades to be perfect. I want to perfect my fades and this and that. It's like, it just doesn't exist. I'm sorry. And then even if it does exist, we've probably all seen a couple of haircuts floating around on Instagram that look like they're the perfect haircuts, the perfect fades. But there's a certain level of Photoshop and editing in there. Not to be fucking hating on it. It's still, and that's a separate skill. It's still a good skill. But at the same time, that's just setting unrealistic expectations. It's like that whole concept that we come back to all the time about, like, Instagram has made, it's made real things undesirable because it's made perfect look achievable.
I think a great perspective shift there is something that we talk about in the academy all the time, is to change it to aiming for a level of excellence. Excellence is a habit, and what we say all the time, you are what you do most of the time. If you're always aiming for a level of excellence, I think that's absolutely fine. And I think that helps you to let go of that idea of perfect. Because does perfect really exist?
No.
In anything, is anything ever perfect?
Mathematic equations.
In
their own parameters, probably. But I think striving for that level of excellence is really what we always come back to within that presentation in the academy. And it's like, it's one of them things that if you are striving for a level of excellence, it means you're always putting in the effort. And I think that's the most important thing.
And I think an understanding when you're striving for a level of excellence is nothing is perfect. That's where the perspective shift change. You understand now that nothing is perfect, but that doesn't mean you can't always aim for a level of excellence. And that to me is way more powerful. Yeah. And that will send your career on a trajectory, or anything that you do. It will send it on a trajectory which is hard to be reckoned with. It's hard to cage people like that, you know?
Yeah, because if you look at today, for example, this isn't perfect.
No.
We didn't set this up to be perfect. We were just like...
And lots of people have told us that.
Let's just talk about perfectionism. Yeah. And that's something that we wanted to talk about, actually. You know, since we started doing this, and since we started doing the network, and sharing what the network's going to be about, not everyone. Look, that's lies.
Not everybody.
Not everyone. But we've got a fair few people writing to us. More people have wrote to us trying to give us advice and tips on what to do, rather than say well done and congratulations. Fair play to you guys for doing that.
Yeah,
you should have better lighting. You should have better microphones. You should have this. You should have that.
Yeah.
It's like you're worried about the wrong things.
Yeah,
the message is still there.
You're looking at the
value
aesthetic.
Is still there.
You're looking at the aesthetic, not the value, and that worries me.
Yeah, that's it's almost like a cool social experiment to see. Because what if it was perfect?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
You can really always pick something out that's imperfect.
Yeah.
If you can look at the most perfect of haircuts, right? Like technicality wise. And if you really want to, you can find something wrong with it.
Yep.
But those are not the types of people that I want to hang around with.
It's a strand of hair. It's something like that. Minuscule. But is it perfect? No. Probably not. You know?
Our industry is terrible for that.
But is that what
barbering. Barbering's way worse than hairdressing and that kind of stuff.
I've given up on trying to make my posts and haircuts look perfect. I actually enjoy them not being perfect now, you know? Because it's an understanding and a level of excellence that I'm always just striving for.
But there's sometimes more to an image than just the hair.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, it depends what you're trying to portray. But I just think for me, there's one thing in my life that will never hold me back, and that's my perfectionism. I do love doing things to the best of my abilities. That's a lot different to saying I'm a perfectionist. I think, you know, a lot of people, there's a lot of people that I know that will say that they're perfectionists. But at what point is your perfectionism becoming destructive?
There's a spin on that as well, isn't there? I think you say you're a perfectionist, but what's that saying about you? Are you afraid of not getting the recognition?
For being a perfectionist?
Or just for the work that you do?
In general, yeah.
If someone goes, you're afraid of someone going,
it's a safety mechanism.
That's no good.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Everyone's got their own perspective, and it's all subjective, especially what we do in hair. It's so subjective. That's who's to say what's a perfect haircut, you know? Some people just like what they like.
That's why it's okay to let it go.
Just let it go.
You know, we see it a lot with some of the younger guys that we've been around, and it's like they just want. It's almost like we're like, push it out, just get it out to the world, do it, post that picture, do this,
get on to the next one.
Because tomorrow it's old news.
Yep.
And too many people are hung up. On one small thing. It's something that you shouldn't be hung up on. It's like, put it out there, tomorrow it's gone. It's as simple as this these days. You know, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's as simple as this. Somebody pulls out their phone, they look at this piece of content that you've spent so much time thinking about and worrying about and being a perfectionist about. They pull it out, and we've been witness to this because we've put a lot of effort into some of our stuff. And it's as simple as this, guys. Oh yeah, boom. Scroll past. People might not even like it. So that's the thing. Putting your shit out there for likes, not the goal anymore. Spoke about it and touched on it in the last one, the last podcast. But it's not something that we're striving towards anymore.
No.
To be honest, somebody might find this podcast in 5 years and find value in it. Like, that's what it's about.
Exactly.
For us
and
now.
That's interesting. Like, that's kind of interesting to lead into what I was thinking about there. It's like, and sometimes perfect, like what is deemed as perfect, is time sensitive as well. Because like you were saying, you know, look at haircuts that we thought were perfect in the 90s, or the ones that you were doing back in the day, or I was doing back in the day. We thought they were great. We're like, oh, that's perfect. Time sensitive. Like now you look back and go, oh, not so much. You know?
Yeah.
Might have been perfect to you, but even at the time it might not have been perfect to somebody else. But that's the thing, it relates to like a social media feed.
Yeah.
You know, I've been trying to help a few people lately with, they've got a bit of analysis paralysis on what they should post. And I'd just say, what are you worried about? And like you just said, put it out to the world. Just put it out there. Move on to the next one. Why? Because even if it is perfect right now, not going to be perfect forever, because someone will always do it better, or you'll even do it better. And it's a scroll away from being forgotten about, you know? Yeah. If you look at your phone's only so big. What, you see a grid? How many photos you see a grid when you open someone's profile? You see about 6 images, 9 images, something like that? Yeah. If you're anywhere past those, it's almost forgotten about. Mm-hmm. We live in such a fast pace of attention and memory that your best post that you think is perfect now will be forgotten about in 6 months. You know? So that's why it makes sense. Strive for a level of excellence, like, and then you get yourself out of that conundrum, you know?
And we look at it like a timeline. It's like a timeline that you can look back on your journey.
Yeah.
I think it's great to look back through all of that stuff. But yeah, the analysis paralysis thing is great.
Yeah.
And I think perfectionism is sometimes labeled as the blaming like the blaming thing for that. You know, like some people blame perfectionism for analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
They're separate things. Yeah. They're separate things. And perfectionism, it comes from fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being critiqued. You know, you're protecting yourself. You know, your ego is telling yourself, your ego side of your personality is actually telling you that that's what you are.
I think that comes from, like, for me, that would come from childhood. And I think it probably would for a lot of people too. Like the way that your brain is structured from a child, your value is tied up in how good you are. Your value is never tied up in just how you are. So this is something that I learned from a psychologist called Dr. Gabor Mate. He said this is one of the issues with parenting, is only putting value on a child when they're being good, and not putting value on them when they're good and they are bad. And a lot of people struggle to understand that, because they'll be like, well, why would you put value on a child when they're being bad? But okay, well, you're just devaluing them there, and that encourages perfectionism. If you get too caught up, this is where I said it from being a kid, being a people pleaser, this is where I think it comes from. If you get too caught up in that cycle of, okay, I can't be bad, I can only be good, you are constantly trying to be perfect all the time. You're constantly trying to be good. And I think it can come from childhood and make its way through from your work. You're afraid of ever being not good and not of value.
That's where you get your
because you've tied your value to be only ever being good, when how you are, just as you are, is enough value. It's enough. But we're not taught that. I wasn't taught that. Not that it's a bad thing. My parents loved me to pieces, and they had a great, we have a great relationship. And I'm very happy in, with how I was brought up. But there's always a little flip, and there's always a mechanism there that I think like develops it. And to me, I feel like, especially in Western world, our value is often lost when we're being, in quotes, naughty. And I think that how Dr. Gabor Mate explains it is like that doesn't train a child's brain very well, and it gears us towards perfectionism. Because that's the only way we ever see value in ourselves, is if it got to be perfect, has to be perfect, I can't be any other way. And that's what I meant before. It was like the fear of not being perfect is actually your ego being damaged. It's your ego protecting you, because you don't want to go through the pain of realizing that, just accepting, it wasn't quite good enough, but that's okay, because then you could set yourself on the journey of getting back to being, you know what, it's all okay, it's subjective anyway. My value is fine how I am, the good and the bad,
Definitely. Right. Like, you know, if we cared about perfectionism so much, we wouldn't even be doing this podcast right now.
No.
And there's probably certain things that we've said throughout the podcasts, you know, so far, and we're learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's all part of that letting go of the perfectionism. It's like, done is better than perfect. Gary Vee always says it.
Brilliant.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah. And like, look, I'm glad we're on a level with this. It's like there are certain elements of perfectionism, professionalism and quality that we just do have to let go. We only have certain resources right now. We have certain circumstances, certain situations. Some things we just got to let go of. And that's practicing not being attached to the perfectionism.
Yeah,
and I think it's fine.
As Gary Vee also says, he says, fuck perfect, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you need to start now, like.
Yeah.
And how are you going to figure out what perfect is if you don't even take the appropriate steps to trying?
Yeah.
To trying to figure out how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
Taking one step at a time. Sometimes perfect can become such a big thing.
Yeah.
It's like a lead balloon that holds people down. Don't you reckon?
Yeah.
I think it is, because it's almost like it's a lead balloon that holds people back from actually achieving or doing what they want to do with their lives, because they become so overwhelmed by this thought of perfectionism and how certain something or a certain job or task has to look and how it has to start and how the conditions around it have to be before they even begin.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I can't do that today because it's raining.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be perfect because it's raining.
They're waiting for the perfect day to do it.
It's like, well, you're going to fucking... That day is going to... Like, one day turns into 2 days. And this is where the habit forming thing comes back in again.
I love it.
2 days turns into 4 days. 4 days turns into 8 days. 8 turns into 16. And you can see where I'm going with this. There's no better time.
You'll keep closing the doors on yourself.
You'll keep closing the doors. And you'll keep blaming your perfectionism, because that's a nice thing to blame yourself with. Because if you label yourself as a perfectionist, you're kind of rubbing yourself up. You're kind of like, oh, well, I'm a perfectionist, like, as if it's such a nice thing.
Oh, that's just me.
But don't let it become toxic, is what we're trying to say here.
Yeah.
You know,
I can elaborate a little bit on that, and a little thought experiment as well with, like, being a perfectionist. Like you said, you know, perfect shouldn't be the end goal. You can almost liken it to, like, winning something, right? If you win the race, or if you're number one, or you're the best, like, that's perfect, right? Considered perfect in a way. Let's just trying to liken it to that.
Yeah, okay.
Then
I've got something to say about that too, though.
But then I think, then what?
But this is the thing. This is why the consistency element comes into it too. And it's like, if you think about a sporting background, for example, I know at the top level of sport, even when the teams win, there's still analysis afterwards, because it's never over.
And it's never a perfect race.
No. So, like, you can say, take Formula 1, for example. Lewis Hamilton wins a race. You know, they don't just go home after the race and analyze nothing. Just say, oh, well, we just done it great now. We don't have to worry about anything anymore. Yeah. They'll go back and say, Lewis, this is where you could have made up on this second, because they know all of the people behind them in that particular race, which are the other drivers and other teams, are going to be analysing the winning performance. So how do you get the winning performance to get to the next step? You know, like, there has to be some sort of analysis throughout. Yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean, though. It's like, then what?
But if it's okay, put it like this: all you're going for is perfectionism, right? If it's perfect, then what? And secondly, why is it so important that it's perfect? Because what are you now going to do with it? Would you want me to just tell you you're the best and perfect? Yeah. So what good is that in the end?
That's the thing,
you know, and
rubbing yourself up, like.
And getting back to the winning and being perfect, you know, like Simon Sinek always says, it's only perfect and you're only the winner and you're only the best in the parameters that we've built for ourselves at the time.
That particular competition, that particular race, that particular time, that particular set of judges.
Yeah, in their own
opinions.
In their own opinion, which is subjective. So really,
and who's to know that one of them judges didn't write down the wrong mark on somebody else's thing as a mistake?
Hey,
and that's the difference between winning and losing.
Hey, we've seen that before.
That's probably happened.
We've seen some stuff before at some comps where you think, what's going on there? It's very subjective.
But like, again, touching on the whole thing with, you know, coming second, and like, I love it, you know, I love it. It keeps you on the journey, keeps you working. It's like the whole Gary Vee thing, and I learned to love it. I love losing as well.
Yeah, it's the quote, staying
rooted. Gotta be good at failing.
Staying rooted in the struggle.
Yeah,
love that. Love it. Like,
but fail, but like, it's so cliche and cringe. A lot of the stuff we say probably sounds that way just because we're deep thinkers, but it's like,
we love an analogy, don't we? We love a quote.
Love an analogy. Jesus Christ. But it's like, you know, fail. It's like fail again, but just fail better.
Yeah. And
then fail better.
Yeah.
And then fail better again. And then you're each day getting closer and closer. And purposely the other day when I put them haircuts up of the ones that I did years ago,
yeah,
I put one up from very recently beforehand, purposely to be like, this is where it's gone to. Like, back then when I was posting pictures of them haircuts that were arguably trash, I didn't care, because at that time there was a purpose.
Yeah,
they were being posted for a reason, because me advertising it was putting money in my pocket.
Yeah.
Now, if I was so worried about the perfection, I would have never even taken the first step out the door, which was that, to get me to where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So it's a snowball effect.
Yeah. It's great. And like, even just touching on like the social media stuff, like for me, that, you know, it's been so freeing giving up on the idea of it being perfect, and it keeps it real as well. Like, not all your haircuts are going to be perfect. You know,
people buy into authenticity too. It's like,
yeah,
not everything has to be movie production.
No,
and I think that's what the interesting thing when you know, the same people who will give us advice on the mics and the lighting and this and that, and look, it's not always interpreted in a negative way. I honestly am very grateful for the feedback, and anybody who has any feedback for us, I always take it on board.
I actually love it. Yeah,
I take it on board, and we try to improve it all the time. But the missing message in that is that we've started. We're doing it. There's a difference between doing it and critiquing it from the couch.
Yep, exactly.
You know,
I'm thinking about us, like, you know, failing better as well. I love what you were just saying there about failing better. Let's try and talk about a framework on how to fail better. I think, because some people would probably be thinking, oh, how do you fail better? You know, I think something for me that in all of my fails and losses, it's the analysis afterwards. Like you said with a race, get good at analysing your fails, because and see what it was that went wrong, and because then the lessons become apparent to you. And
it requires an extreme amount of
humility,
self-awareness.
Yeah, self-awareness and humility to go there.
And and sometimes, you know, you can fool yourself. I remember for years as a cyclist, I almost had to prove it to myself that I wasn't just fooling myself, because I used to make up excuses for myself at times.
Yeah.
At races and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like this happened or that happened, and certain times them things did happen, but there was other times where I definitely was just making up excuses to protect myself.
Yeah.
And like, you have to be real. The analysis afterwards has to be real. Yeah. You know, like,
and like I was talking to you about the other day, the thing that Tim Ferriss talks about in one of his books, you know, if something's hard or it's gone wrong or it's not perfect, you know, he's come up with a great way to like get the answers for yourself. And it was like he writes in a way, he says, if this was easy, what would it look like? And I was explaining it to Owen about people when they don't really know what's gone wrong with their haircuts or how to improve or where to improve, just say, okay, well, if this was perfect or if it was easy, what would it look like? Okay, all right, well, my layering would be a bit more accurate, my fade would be a bit more stretched out, a bit more balanced, and I'd just be a bit faster at doing this bit. There you go. You just gave yourself all the answers. You need to work on your speed, your accuracy, and your layering.
Yeah.
So those three things are a great way, a great little like sort of reverse engineering process on just starting to get some answers, because it's not always easy to be, I think, analytical and critical on yourself, again, because your ego might be protecting you and it just might not let you go there straight away. But if you can start to put a structure in place of being like, right, if there's just a way I can get a few answers, again, you start to form the habit, and then you can learn to be able to fail better. Because obviously it's a minefield sometimes. Yeah. And some people have got to get out of the way of their feelings first. You know, some people fail and lose and they'll go bawl their eyes out. Oh, I lost. It's like, all right, yep. Like you need to get over that first. Get out of that, you know.
How do you use it? You know, like, if we don't win something, like nowadays our mindset around competition work and stuff like that has changed. But in the past, you know, if you don't, do you use that as fuel to the fire, or do you just sit around and mope about it?
It's like the Stoics say.
It's like, what do you do next?
Anything you throw in front of the fire becomes fuel for the fire. You can't really argue that, can you? And that's how I like to see, you know, our kind of mindset. All these little suggestions. Oh, well, the sound's not great. Oh, well, the light's not great. Okay. Keep throwing them. We're just one big fire, you know. It's just going to keep. It's fueling, because we're at a mindset of it's not being perfect, and we want to strive for a level of excellence. Okay, it might not be excellent in comparison to like movie quality, but it's a level of excellence for us, because we've just started.
But it's like, how do you get to the top of the stairs without taking the first step?
Exactly.
Stairs? And there's a great analogy coming back to that haircut situation where I posted that haircut years ago thinking that it was great at the time. We're posting what we're posting now with the podcast thinking it's great at the time, but wait until you see this in a couple of years time.
Yeah,
like, you have to start as you mean to go on as well. Like, we're going to start and we're doing our best for what we can do right now.
Yeah,
this is as perfect as we can make it today.
Yeah.
And if we were to just say, oh look, we have to wait and we have to spend 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand on podcasting equipment, and we have to send it to this person, we'd be forever waiting. Sometimes you got to just control what you can control.
Yeah. And that's where I think, you know, modern day stuff just goes so wrong with, you know, the way we're marketed things and the way we're taught to be just blind consumers. And, you know, it's like we're missing the value. You can miss all the value just by looking at the aesthetic. Oh, well, the light's not quite right. By the time you've worked out all the stuff that you don't like about it, you've missed 20 minutes of the conversation. And you've missed some drops of gold. So yeah, look, it's not just about everything being perfect. No, you say,
I think coming to an understanding and coming to an acceptance that somebody is always going to look at it and they're always, you know, opinions are like arseholes. Like, everyone has one, you know.
Love it.
I know that's pretty fucking rude to say it, but it's true. Everyone's going to have an opinion, so you need to first of all get over that. Touching back on episode number 4, stop watching who's watching. Stop looking at who's watching. Who cares?
Yeah.
Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it to please them?
Yep.
Do it for you. And if you're happy and you want, I think one of the most valuable marketing tools of all is sharing your story. And this is a perfect way of us sharing our story. It's starting, and you know, in a year's time we'll look back at the network and we'll say, look how far it's come since then. We do that with Area Academy. Look how far it's come since then.
It's like it just in the, you know, what, year and a bit that we've been going, like it was hard to imagine it. I think back to the very first day we started doing stuff. It's just hard to see it going this way, you know, like, or you can never, not that I didn't expect great things, but like, to picture exactly how it is and me having a perfect picture in my mind is just not, it's not right, you know.
A perfect example of it, pardon the pun, a perfect example of that is we could arguably have said, oh look, it's just not the right time to set up Area Academy because of COVID.
Yeah.
Let's just wait until we're out. We'd still be fucking waiting.
When is the perfect time?
You know, we see it all the time. I'm going to wait until this time and this time and this time. But then life throws you curveballs, you know? Like, it throws you curveballs. You got to just act on how you feel in a certain moment, because who knows? In a couple of years' time, we might not even be doing hair anymore.
Yep.
Who knows? Like,
who knows?
Who knows where this could all go? Who knows? Who knows? You know, I started to get a bit weird. But yeah, it's so true, though. I mean, ultimately, the main lesson from today's podcast, you can't let your perfectionism stop you.
No. It goes back to, like we say, this is part of practicing just getting out of your own way. Really powerful.
And we've witnessed it, and I feel like that's why we wanted to share this message. We've witnessed it around us, in our close circle, over the years. There's a lot of people, and look, don't get me wrong, everyone to their own, each to their own. As long as you're happy on a day-to-day basis, that is the most important and fundamental key thing, your happiness.
Yep.
But understand and realize your potential. I think that's one of the main things that we always talk about at the Academy, and that's in our mission statement, is we want to help people in realizing their potential. And to realize your potential, you have to let go of your perfectionism.
Because unfortunately, the way that this world is set up, it's not set up to help you realize your potential. You're not going to get there just by doing the things that you're told to do.
No.
Just not going to do it. Because how is it going? Not great.
Yeah. And where's your
Generally, it's not going great, is it?
And then where's your point of difference?
Exactly. Yep.
So I think that's it, guys. We'll keep this one nice and snappy.
That was great.
I think just a quick little, burst of optimism. Don't let your perfectionism get in your way. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. If you could be ever so kind, please leave us a review of the podcast. I think it would be great if we could get some sort of reviews and feedback. Again, we're always aware that our podcasts aren't perfect and that we want to make them better each time. We're striving for excellence within all of this. Again, quick shout out to the sponsors. We'll pop them up here, and we'll see you on episode 6.